Hey, what's going on guys? It's me, Aiden from Cartoon Apocalypse, and today I'm back with another Star vs. the Forces of Evil video. Today I'm going to be going through the most important parts in Crescenta's chapter in the Magic Book of Spells. This video is just summarizing the most important parts of Crescenta's chapter. This video is meant to be a little bit shorter, relatively speaking, because I'm going to be pointing out the facts we learned from Crescenta's chapter. I'm not really going to be analyzing them like I would an analysis video. There's kind of an exception there as far as this video is concerned, but that's besides the point. I would recommend getting the Book of Spells if you haven't read it already. This book is really amazing. I have made videos on the previous 6 chapters in case you're interested in those. But anyway, let's get on with this video. Cresenta the Eager. When the one before her proved unfit, Cresenta the Eager took the role, and along with her gal pal Emily, kept the monsters under human control. Cresenta was the 33rd Queen of Mewny. She is the second daughter of Festivia the Fun. After Durhana was proven unfit to be queen, Cresenta took over the wand and the spellbook. Cresenta is 3 years younger than Durhana. Right off the bat from the first page we can see that Cresenta is definitely self-centered. I will touch on this a lot later, but here are a couple lines that prove this. I mean, what a disappointment to be over-sparkled by your little sister at just about everything. Not to brag, but this is a tremendous accomplishment. I am very big-hearted and wish more than anything to serve my people and help others. These at first might not be direct evidence of her being more self-centered, but like I said, I will talk about more evidence later. One time Cresenta snuck into Durhana's room and took her wand, and the wand transformed into the wand she would own in a few years. This is similar to when Marco grabbed Star's wand and it transformed into something different. Glossaric says that he preferred Durhana over Cresenta. Now that was the wand / intro page. Now we move on to the era of Bunny's year 1. Already we start to see more signs of self-centeredness. Cresenta says, even though it was so obvious that Durhana wasn't meant to be queen, I hate to say it, but the truth is some people are just shining stars, and others are sad, endless black holes of nothingness. You see, I knew I was special. Now I really only bring this up because we can really learn Crescenta's character throughout this story, so that's why I'm bringing this up. Cresenta clearly thinks down upon everyone but herself. She also calls herself queen, not directly, but she's basically considering herself as a queen after only 1 year of being a princess. Some may interpret this to mean that she already thinks she's better than her mother, and that she believes that she deserves to be queen already because her mother's not doing as good as she is. Now, despite Cresenta thinking she is the best and all that, she's actually telling the truth. She is one of the youngest princesses ever to create spells. She created the Levitato spell at the age of 12. She also created 37 spells in the time of 1 moon cycle. A moon cycle may be a day or maybe a week or a year. I'm not really sure. The 1 day option makes the most sense to me, but I don't think it affects things too much either way. Now that brings us to the era of Bunny's year 2. She starts off immediately by saying that she has been very busy. Judging by what she has already accomplished in her first year, we can tell that she is destined for great things. Now I know what you're thinking. What has she done in the past year? Well, let me list them off for you. Cresenta has created a lot of useful spells. She has been going to the Magic High Commission's meetings, she wrote a play, she learned to play the trumpet, started the future leadership of Mewny Club, which includes the other princesses and princes of the other minor kingdoms. She joined the Junior Castle Guard and helped keep watch of the castle at night. She did volunteer work for the poor, and she sewed socks for the kingdom's poverty-ridden snakes. Now you may be wondering how she did all that. Well, Cresenta made a spell that gives you 8 hours of sleep in just 4 minutes. Now that to me is incredibly useful. Now there's a line in here that is important to note. Cresenta says, this is the kind of thinking that separates the simple-minded monsters from the strong Mew women. This is here to show that the queens are still being taught to hate monsters and don't even think about hey, is this wrong? There is also another line in here that is a good indication of who Cresenta is as a person. She says, sometimes being so special can be isolating. I don't have many people, if anyone, I can talk to. Everyone my age is so immature. I thought my great accomplishments would bring real friends, that people would want to orbit my shining star. It turns out the road to greatness is a lonely one. This shows you that on the outside, Crescenta is an outgoing, seemingly happy person, but on the inside, she feels lonely and wishes she had friends. We can also assume that she tells herself that she's better than everyone else for an excuse to not have people to talk to. She may think that if she's better than everyone else, then she doesn't need anyone else. Obviously, that's not true, but it's what keeps her going. So that brings us to the era of Bunny's Year 3. Crescenta starts off by saying that she is still busy and showing us that she is being productive. The main thing Crescenta talks about in this section is that her, along with the future leaders of Mewnie Club members, has made some basic rules to keep the kingdom streets clean because they were dirty. So now it's time for Era of the Bunny's Year 4. Crescenta has made a true friend. She is the Princess of Kelpbottom. Crescenta calls her Emily. One thing to note, in the show itself we haven't heard anything about the Waterfolk Kingdom. However, the Season 4 poster looks to be underwater, so we may learn more about that in Season 4. Emily is similar to Crescenta because she is ambitious and mature, according to Crescenta. An interesting line coming from Crescenta says, "As Emily and I always say, you can only rely on yourself," with 4 exclamation points at the end. This is a result of Crescenta being alone for all of these years. She has taught herself not to rely on anyone because they'll probably let you down. Then this is not true. Some people may let you down, but not everybody. This line tells me that Crescenta is not truly 100% friends with Emily, because if she was, then she would know that she could rely on Emily. And if Emily was truly Crescenta's friend, in the same way, then she would know that she could rely on Crescenta. True friends should be able to trust each other. The next thing that Crescenta brings up is about when she went through Muberty. I believe Crescenta is the only queen so far in this book to bring up Muberty, which is kind of odd. This may have been on purpose, or maybe not. One thing that is important to mention is that Muberty doesn't happen to all princesses, according to Crescenta. She says that her sister Durhenna did not. She says that the cause of Muberty is the prolonged exposure to magic. She says that it eventually hits a peak where it cannot be contained any longer. When this happens, you get a peak of your ultimate magic form. And that brings us to the era of Bunny's Year 5. The main thing she talks about in this section is her Levitato spell. However, she also mentions how Emily and her talked about what they would be like when they were queen. Crescenta said that she would be strong and fair and in control at all times. She says that the people will respect but also love her. And we can see that Crescenta's ego has not changed much from when she was younger. Now the next page is her Levitato page. I will list off all the spells that she has mentioned at the end of this video, but there are some important things on this page. Crescenta says on this page that she is fluent in English, Merbubble, Demon Tongue, and Low Mewnian. If you want to learn more about Low Mewnian, then you can watch my full video on all of the decoded messages in this book. But let's go ahead and talk about the hidden messages on the Levitato page. The first one says, "You have no idea of the marvelous things I will accomplish." That message is something pretty typical to what we would expect Crescenta to say. The next message says, "I am better than my old sister Dur at everything." Now this is getting a little bit out of character from what we know from Crescenta. Crescenta is usually a little bit kinder when she is talking about Durhenna, but that's just kind of rude. The last Low Mewnian message on this page says, "I will be the greatest queen this world has ever known." This is a little cocky even for Crescenta. This proves that Crescenta is not as nice as she was once believed to be. There will be more to add to her personality as we move through the chapter, and just everything about this when we learn at the end of the chapter why she's experiencing this, but I'll talk about that when we get to it because I like to go in order from the start of the chapter to the end of the chapter. For now, let's move on to the era of Bunny's Year 6. This section starts off with Crescenta saying, "The monsters are at it again." According to Crescenta, the monsters are complaining that they are not being treated fairly, but Crescenta disagrees. Crescenta says, "If they weren't so lazy and bloodthirsty," which is showing that she has almost no respect for the monsters whatsoever at this point in time. Crescenta is probably going off of the bias that she was taught and has never tried to question it, which is how most queens are. The monsters also say that they are at a disadvantage because they don't have magic, which is true. The monsters are at a disadvantage, but Crescenta's view on this is pretty interesting. She first states that she had to work very hard to be any good at magic, which is probably true. But then she says, "No one handed anything to me." And this is not true. If it was not for her wand, Crescenta would have nothing. Being alone with her ego for all of these years has started to make her go insane. We will see this continue throughout her chapter. Then Crescenta says that she created 4,700 beneficial spells. So now we're moving on to the era of Bunny's year 7. This is the year that Crescenta became queen. With all that she has done, many would have thought that she would have already been queen by now, but that's not the case. She says that she has gotten right to work. Then she starts talking about how rules are important, and then she says this: "What you need is someone in charge who really cares about her people, someone with strong ethics and a good sense of what is right and wrong, someone like me," with a bunch of exclamation points after it. This is interesting because from the secret messages we saw, Crescenta does not really meet that criteria. There's also more stuff in the chapter that makes Crescenta unsuitable for this role, but that brings us to the era of Bunny's year 8, or halfway through her chapter. Crescenta starts off by saying that being queen has been excellent. She spends a lot of time in meetings. Crescenta's main project has been the monsters. The monsters are now being led by a Septarian named Seth. Seth has a possibility of being mentioned in Season 4. The Next Big Thing made a good video talking about Seth. I'll leave that video linked in the description below if you're interested. Another interesting thing mentioned in year 8 is the fact that Emily decided to not be the queen of the Waterfolk Kingdom. This is for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because the Waterfolk Kingdom is a minor kingdom, meaning it is still ruled by Crescenta and the Magicae Commission. The second reason is because she thought she could do more good for the kingdom by staying by Crescenta's side. This makes me believe that Emily may have stayed with Crescenta just so she didn't start turning evil. Just an interesting thing to ponder about. Alright, now to the era of Bunny's year 9. This section is talking about Crescenta and Emily's plan for the monsters. They basically held an election and gave the monsters a king and a queen. Who was the queen and king, you may be asking? Well, their names are Pema and Pseudo Ervius, aka Ludo's parents. This actually explains a lot about Ludo and his family. We did already know that Ludo's parents were Queen and King of Mewni, but it was a more less known fact. Of course, the new Queen and King of the monsters were still butterfly controlled. The Erviuses did what Crescenta said as long as they got a castle, gold, and power. And another interesting thing is that Seth ran against them to be king. So that brings us to the era of Bunny's year 10. This section basically explains that Ludo's parents won the election and that it wasn't easy. Crescenta did many things to help Ludo's parents win the election over Seth. But now since they have won, they are starting to implement a lot of new rules for the monsters to follow. So that brings us to the era of Bunny's year 11. The main thing to take away from this chapter is that Emily is attending the Magicae Commission meetings. Emily is getting closer and closer to Crescenta, which is probably a good thing because if she doesn't keep a watch on Crescenta at all times, Crescenta might go rogue and might cause havoc. Now on to the era of Bunny's year 12. This section is used to say that Emily was made chief advisor and Crescenta's partner in ruling of Mewni. So that is all for the year sections. We now move on to the spells section. There are some interesting things written in these sections, so don't be discouraged when I say spell sections. On the next page, Crescenta says that she has created over 5,000 spells. So she created Crescenta Spells volumes 1 through 26. Obviously, she didn't put all 5,000 spells in this book, but she did put some of her most special spells. The next spell we learn about is called Reliso Demonisa Infestica, something along those lines, aka the demon arm spell that Star blasted Marco with to heal his broken bone. This spell heals a broken bone and infects the host with a virus. There's actually a secret message written on this page that reads, "Oh, you broke a bone? How sad. You should have taken care of yourself better. Now you have a demon curse. Blue Holum." This just shows you how mean and belittling Crescenta really is. The next spell is Annex Ignis Idiom, or something like that. Use the spell when you need to tie your shoes and set a building on fire. The next spell is Lex Locus Sabricus, or again something like that. These are kind of hard to pronounce. This spell is used when you need to light up a room and make everybody around you horribly itchy. The next spell is Regulus Solum Lacrimis. This spell takes away feelings of loneliness, and that's pretty much it. There's no like makes everybody itchy or anything. Now this is how Cresenta stayed stable all of those years ago. Cresenta said, "This was a spell I used a lot before I met Emily. This implies that after she met Emily, she stopped using the spell. This explains why we started seeing different behavior from Cresenta after she met Emily." There are also messages written in Low Mewnian that say, "Keep productive at all times. Life isn't for the weak, and get over your weakness, you turd." This shows that Crescenta's mental health was not good. There's even a little message that is really hard to read. I can only make out the bottom half of what it says, and it says, "No new ways to destroy life," or at least that's what I think it says. That is concerning no matter what context you are in. On the next and final page of Crescenta's chapter, there's a huge list of spells and what each spell does. I'm not going to read all of them, but I will show a picture of them on screen. Before I do that though, there's one secret message on this page, and it says, "I've spent my life being great, but only Emily appreciates it." Again, showing how lonely Cresenta was throughout her life. So now I'm going to show the pictures of the spells. Feel free to pause the video and read them. I will have each picture up for 8 seconds. Keep in mind, we might see some of these spells in Season 4, so you might want to read it. So now that you've read that, that's pretty much the end of Crescenta's chapter. I can say full-heartedly that this is my favorite chapter to read and pick apart. It's really interesting learning so much about Cresenta as a character. Now when I say Crescenta's chapter was my favorite, do not interpret that to mean that Cresenta is my favorite queen. I'm still deciding who my favorite queen is. I just really liked Crescenta's chapter the best. But that's going to wrap up this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, you can leave a like and subscribe for more content similar to this. But that's going to be it for me, and I'll talk to you guys later. Goodbye.
Release